Howdys and salutations, y'all. How we doing on this fine Sunday morning? Well, for me at least, whatever time of day it might be for y'all. Hopefully you're having a good time. Let's see. Cool. We are live. Excellent. Hopefully the audio is also sounding a little bit better. I'll admit it's probably still a tad echoey, not the best in the world, but it should be better than the fairly like garbled of what we had before. At least I'm thinking it will be. In any case, until I can actually go get like fancy microphone stuff, which will be a while, definitely. This hopefully will at least be a little bit of an improvement on the sound quality. And in the meantime, and I do apologize also if I'm a little gravelly today, I just need to drink some water. I'm sure by the end of the stream it should actually be better, which is rare. Got a big old cup of water with me, so hopefully we can put that to good use. And in the meantime, where did we leave off? Why, actually making headway on Miquella for once. A rare thing indeed. So, looking as we are... pardon me. Looking as we are, we left ourselves some notes so we could pick up where we left off, and move on to probably the next stage soon. Let's see. Okay, right, so we're still working on V2, so we don't have quite the pixel density that I would necessarily like, but we can work with that. It just affects the size of brushes I need to choose. And thankfully I left tips on a separate layer this time, so instead of having to do a bunch of like working around and erasing stuff, we can just turn them off when we need. Still debating like how to crop this. There's a few ways, we'll figure it out. But I think I'm actually going to work on that towards the end because CSP does have options for that. Until then, let's see what we were going to work on today. Aha! Got it. Okay. So the main advice here is this sort of soft bluey green. I guess that'd be like turquoise or teal or some such. That was called a dark seafoam, which wouldn't have been wrong, but would have been weird. So at that point I was saying to do the face first, at least in some level of detail, and then we come back and it's time for the actual, like, quality inking, quality sketch. I think it's probably going to have to be refined sketch first, and then we'll see if we want to do, like, actual inking. Just because there's a lot of areas that still don't have all the detail they need, as between fabric folds and, like, fingers on hands, again, things of that sort. Although we've got some good hand references, since we actually drew some decent hands lately. Let's see. Cool. Okay. We may rotate the face a tiny bit to really be looking at the viewer. Not sure yet, we'll see. Talking about chilling on the braids. Maybe going for like smoother hair with just a few braided accents on this one. Just given current ability at drawing those, but maybe it's worth having another go at that. Something to learn, something to improve at. We could get a little more abstract with it, sort of like we did with Melania's hair. That worked quite well actually when we did that. Okay, bangs of hair pulled to side, braid above, silhouette alone, not the braid. Okay. Just reminders about how to interpret the hair because it's still super sketchy. Figuring out what he's holding. Crown, don't forget the crown. Okay. I don't know if he'd have worn the crown at the... Well, no, the crown's still protected against the outer deities, so yeah, probably would have wanted to keep that around as much as possible still. Okay, yep, hair gets a little messy. And then the actual sketch. Cool. Then I am going to spend a little bit of time working on the face. Just a hair. And, once that is done, we'll move on to the cleaner sketch work. Have a good simple morning ahead of us. Oh, yep, I'm still in that color. I wonder. I guess we're going to want to use like a 20 for this. It feels kind of more pixely than the existing one there does. Maybe 25. That feels less bad. Still not great. Again, I've realized that it's actually pretty nice to draw on a much higher resolution canvas and then size it down as needed. Because I've been trying to draw on, like, I don't know, like current monitor size and like actual final result canvases. But really, and I'd forgotten about this, I've learned it in a tutorial way back when I was starting digital art. Really, it's probably better to do, like, they were recommending double size. That'd be the equivalent of 4 canvases laid together. Maybe that'd be 4x the size. It depends on which thing you're doubling or quadrupling. In any case. And then, like, resizing it down to HD, which is probably what I ought to have been doing this whole time. But I was a little worried about file sizes and things like that, which all seem to be fine at this point. So, rather than getting too caught up in all that, I would really love to be doing this on a much higher resolution canvas, because you can even see, like, the pixely chunkiness at this point. Like, we're not going to be able to get a lot of face detail in here. Like, I'm just trying to work out proportions and such. Really, maybe leaving it as the planes of the face for now is best. Right, that's what I was thinking. I've been thinking of shifting it a little bit there so we've got that central line. Just when I was brainstorming the other day, I couldn't remember what my, what storm my brain had wrought, or rather brought in. Oh, it'd be easy to keep that visibly looking at us just using the eyes, so I'm not too worried about that. Basically, head-on view, it's not 100%, like we can see the side a little bit, which should keep things slightly more dynamic, truthfully. I think that'll be better. But, it does also keep them looking slightly less directly at us, which is potentially less intense. So it's a balancing act. In any case, I think that our very rough sketch area is, just about come together. Apologies for the yawns. I won't deny, my sleep schedule of late has been truly dreadful. I think I've put 40 hours into Baldur's Gate. Oh no. It's a fascinatingly difficult to put down game. I am a little sad about how the whole goblin encounter went down, but generally speaking, it's been fun. I don't want to spoil anything, but suffice it to say, there's a bunch that I had hoped to be able to leave to do their own thing, not to invade, but just to go and, like, move on with their lives, and I accidentally aggroed a rather larger percentage of the camp than I had perhaps intended. I won't say how or what happened, but it did. Actually, I'm having a lot of fun with, hold on, let's call this rough sketch. Not sledge. Sounds gross. No idea what that would even be, but it sounds gross. Okay. That up. No, not. Yeah, that would happen. There we go, layer 2, off to the top with you. I'm gonna call it sketch for now, but I kind of anticipate this one also spilling over into a couple different layers, truthfully. At least as we work on it. Okay, we've got these, which again, you can see the higher resolution canvas just looks really sharp. Whereas this one, even zoomed out, doesn't have that cleanness, that sharpness. It's there, but it's not anywhere near the same. But once we get to the shadows and grays, it'll be easier. And, ooh, I'm looking forward to that stage once we get to it. That'll be fun. But, yeah, no, suffice it to say, Baldur's Gate has been difficult to put down. There's also an infamous moon-related puzzle that I just solved on my own, which I'm quite happy with. As in, like, not even reading any of the books that give you tips on what the answer to the puzzle is. I just looked at it, I recognized it as vaguely reminiscent to a thing I'd seen on a wall in a different area, and was like, yeah, I'll try that, and then it worked. So I was quite happy with that. But yes, no, I've been enjoying the game. It's had its stressful moments, to be sure. And I worry that my character's moral compass is getting a little bit off track. But we'll get back to that. Let's see. In addition to that, oh yeah, I've been having a lot of fun. So I know we did the stream with Galactic, but Siphomir's not actually my main playthrough character. Because truth be told, back in the D&D days, Siphomir was a fairly one-note character. It's part of the reason I actually ended up sort of adopting him as my own title now. Is because, like, it was kind of easy to self-insert and replace the character with actual me, because there wasn't a lot of depth there. However, this other one I'm playing was an NPC I created for a campaign that never saw the light of day. The campaign did, but the NPC didn't. And so I've been having a great time because they've actually got a lot of lore and backstory stuff. Admittedly not in Faerun, which is where Baldur's Gate happens, but it's been adaptable. And one of the biggest things is that they were at one point rather taken in by an organization of not the most credible organization, basically, and thoroughly duped. And so they've got some, let's just say, strong feelings now about certain types of organizations. And long story short, I'm hunting down the Zentarim, which, best as I can tell, is probably going to make my life considerably harder as the game progresses. But I'm okay with that. Because I dislike them more than most any other faction in the game. Wildly unpleasant bunch. Not interested in doing business with them. Let's see. Okay. Apologies again for the yawns. I'm sorry, I am still waking up a little bit, getting hydrated, all that jazz. I've been thinking I probably ought to just get a humidifier at this point. I wake up so stinking dry every morning. And it's like 20 minutes of getting fluids in and trying to, like, decrust myself. I'm like, okay, there's gotta be a better way. Okay. We've got decent line control, our pen, aha! Knew something felt just a hair off. Although I'm definitely, seem to be getting better at pen control, given that we made it this long with the wrong working area size, and I was still able to get the strokes that I was looking for with the lines. Okay. Okay, I do think we still want to use the real G pen for this. It's, pretty decent. How's the G pen looking on this? Well, okay. G pen might... Well, no, I'm not really a fan of how it's tapering right now. I was wondering if it might be better. Just, because the real G pen has a rougher edge, and that might have been contributing to the pixely look. But this clearly also still suffers from that. And I don't know. I don't like the extreme taper on the G pen right now. It makes it really hard for line quality management, at least at this stage. Well, pardon me. It does not help today, or perhaps it does, I don't know. But I had a particularly not well, I guess stressful is the right word. No, intense is the wrong word. Vivid dream, I suppose. This is what I get for stinking rereading the Foundation trilogy at the same time as playing Baldur's Gate. Basically it was stuck in like modern day, but with political infighting and decay of the Foundation mixed with the immersive gameplay stuff of Baldur's Gate, which, long story short, meant that, like, somehow in my dream I ended up in a scenario where I was playing a game, but so fully immersed that it didn't feel like one, which happens a lot in games, or game dreams, actually. But in that game, local government had taken control that was very snobbish and thought they were untouchable, and launched an attack on the capital of the country, and then we were basically dealing with the aftermath of living through the, you know, inevitable counterattack, because one tiny city was not, in fact, going to beat Washington, D.C. The catch, though, is the part that I kept getting stuck in replaying was the intro, which is during that initial launch, and the sheer tension in the air of having to deal with that was one of the most vivid dreams I've ever had. I'm not loving it, to be honest. Still a lot. A lot to parse. Right, we were going to figure out fabric folds and such now. Which means I need to actually figure out fabric folds and such now. Let's see. This reference is PETA. I like PETA a lot, but this is definitely a rushed reference just to try to get it done without burning out for art fight. So it was a doozy. Most of the time went into the hat angle. I'm not even gonna lie. It was dumb how much time I put into that. However, I think I'd actually rather go back to Izetta. Crack open art fight again. Because I feel like we just learned a lot about shading from Izetta. Not the headshot, but like the full one. Yeah, there we go. But not shading, I'm sorry. Fabric fall and wrinkles and clothing. And like the physics of all that. Or at least, not necessarily the physics themselves, but how to display it. Like how to add these little details that bring it to life. Now the catch being I want something that's a little less of a heavy fabric than this, so I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. I've got some options, some references, but I am going to still have to think. Let's see. Got the arm there, and I need to figure out... Sleeves dangling at extreme angles like this are kind of difficult to deal with. But we're so far below, we'd probably just see the opening, right? Like, the arm would be in there somewhere. But we would see a whole bunch of space around it. Like some distance up. Yeah, that seems more correct. The other reference that we can open whilst we're here, of course, is, if I can find it. Pardon once again, my yawn. Miquella statue. Not exactly the same, but it gives us some sense of the drape of the sleeves. Which is very useful, actually. I mean, of course, there's also the other one with Moog, which has this in a fair bit of detail as well. And in fact, we should take a look at that one, too. Alright, I promise I won't get overly caught up in refs this time. Alright, they were just, like, short sleeve in this one. Really short sleeve. Okay. Let me toss that one and go back to this one. With mid-length sleeves. Slightly rolled up. Okay. I'll admit, I am considerably more tired and out of it today than I'd expected, but that is okay. We're going to keep on plowing through, keep the energy going, which I know sounds like a generic line from like a pop song in the 90s, but it's genuinely like I have found that the more motivated that I act, the more motivated I actually end up being. Or like laughter being the best medicine and smiling to trick yourself into thinking you're happier. It really works. Not like perfectly, it won't magically solve all problems, but it has a tangible impact. And for things like that, why would you turn down a bonus? Oh, my chair creaking isn't getting picked up. It's not usually that creaky. I don't know what's up with it today. Cut to like chair collapsing under me. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. Okay. I'm looking at my fabric references. Baggy sleeve refs. Why did I not do more of you? I like drawing baggy fabric, it's just that this particular angle's a new one, so I'd like to have a little bit of a reference to go off of. And it's a weird, it is a weird angle, so it's kind of a tough one to find references for sometimes. This may have to do. Beep-a-doop-a-doo. Actually, no, I'm going to crack open a new one, because I think my existing ones just aren't quite doing it. Sorry, I'm not doing a fresh search on stream. The random images that turn up for, like, perfectly mundane searches still baffle me sometimes. Like, really? I mean, I guess, to be fair, we should probably be glad. I'm sure that Google and DuckDuckGo and all the others, like, filter out a ton. Just an unfathomable amount of garbage. But there's still stuff that slips through, and I'd rather not broadcast that on stream if I can help it. It's just not a wise plan. Rather like all those streamers who broadcast Baldur's Gate and didn't realize what certain settings did. Whoops. Okay, let's see. Oh, that one's got like rolled cuffs. We could do that. Oh, baggy cuffs. Dubious. Okay, that's baggy, but it's got kind of a cuff still. Kind of liking that one. Not anything crazy, but it will, might do. Problem is, I really need to keep an eye on the end of it. Like, I don't know what you'd call that. The collar of a sleeve? Is there a word for that? I'm sure there is. Dang, I've even, like... the cuff, I'm dumb. I was about to say, I've even, like, literally sewn one before. How do I not know what it's called? And then I remembered from the pattern what it was called. Crikey me, what you doing? Keepers. These references are a wild mix. Nearly something we can... Ooh, okay, hold on. Okay, I think we've got two options now that we can work with. Yeah, that'll do. I'm gonna try to model it off of these. I'll grab them, see if they're on Pinterest at some point. Okay, that'll do. Well, I mean, I still need to be able to see them, so it won't do all that well. But it'll be a start. Okay, let's see. Hey, see, okay. I scrolled one more down, and sure enough, there was one of those images where you're just like, yep, this is why we don't do it on stream. Crikey. No, I've said it a lot, but I'm still, like, I've got so many weird mannerisms I picked up that are, like, vaguely either British or Australian, and I haven't the foggiest. There's another one. I have no idea where they came from. I mean, I've got some guesses, but it's really funky that they've just sort of snuck their way into my vocabulary. Okay. Thinking about gravity. About drapiness of all this. This part ain't quite right. This part ought to, like, curl around a little bit still. But, like, yeah. Part of it, I'm sure, is, well, I mean, one of the things I studied quite heavily in college was medieval literature. And both, look, the US doesn't exactly have a ton of medieval literature to work with, so we were looking at stuff from other countries. And in addition, quite a lot of that literature is translated by folks who are either British or have British spelling and accents and some of the cultural stuff there. Which meant that I got kind of inundated on it from that front. Frankly, we're lucky. I used to speak a lot more like a character in Le Mort d'Arthur. Y'all should consider yourselves lucky that I'm not out here still going like that. I used to greet people in high school with "How goes it?" or "How goes the day?" Which, again, not that crazy at this point, but when every single other sentence you say is also structured like that, it was perhaps slightly jarring. It was fun. I enjoyed it quite a lot. And people put up with my nonsense, so I can hardly complain. Okay. There we go. I'm liking that. Quite a lot more, actually. We'll still be able to get some of the bagginess because there's the inevitable, like, the seam up here. Which I don't necessarily want to be that bold. Makes Miquella look downright buff if you do that. And let's see, it's pointing to a reasonable point on the shoulder. I don't think it's wildly out of place. Okay, cool. See, references. They're amazing. The other thing that probably influenced it, though, besides having an English teacher in high school who also had a penchant for the British spellings and medieval stories, amongst other things. Although I think he was more of a Victorian Gothic and in a, U.S. Southern Gothic, too, for his vibe. But in any case, he was great. He was one of the best teachers I ever had. He, like, almost never turned on the lights in the classroom. It was just the dim light of the sun. And with the angle of our classroom, that was fairly dim. Oh yeah. He introduced me to, like, Welcome to Night Vale. And he had a chainmail tie. He was cool. But in any case, that along with the study of medieval literature was certainly one impact. But the thing that may have really cinched it and not ruined me for life, but certainly had a tangible impact on how I still speak, was somewhere in college. I spent a lot of time in college overstressed and desperately looking for anything to do to, like, as breaks or distractions. Some things were more successful than others. I would say that getting into crafting was ultimately probably a more effective relaxer than, like, various videos and shows and such. But, like, fact of the matter is I ended up seeing a ton of stuff, and I'm not normally the most, like, media savvy person, so it was kind of a weird time for me. Let's see. I feel like our elbow needs to be slightly more defined up here. But I'm also, come on, arm, how you shaped? I guess that would put... that where we wanted the elbow joint? Did we want it down here? I don't think that's right. Oh, is this one of where it's at that angle? Okay, okay, okay. We can do the arm a little differently, and I think it'll still look good. In fact, it'll be an interesting change from what we've done of late. That'll end there. There'll be the bump. That'll kind of concave a little bit. Okay. It's probably just going to end up smoothing out on that end. That's fine. But yeah, sorry, while I'm sorting out arm such. There we go. The other thing was, while I was on those distractions, at some point, I stumbled across the YouTube channel for the British... I don't remember if it was Dave first or Channel 4 that I found first. Some combination thereof. But specifically their comedy game shows, and specifically Would I Lie to You was the first one I found. And also 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown, which I spent an embarrassing amount of time watching both of those. I quite enjoyed them. But they did get rather eclipsed by Taskmaster once I discovered that one, because Taskmaster is amazing. Okay. I need to catch up on that. They only had like through Season 7 posted when I last checked, and I don't know what's going to be region locked or accessible anymore. I will have to do some research on that. But, like, very grand show. Not always as family-friendly as this stream, so just as a fair heads up to anyone out there. But, quite a lot of fun. Very much enjoyed. It was certainly more satisfying watching something like Taskmaster, and well, I can't for the life of me tell you why. I have this vague sense that I watched a lot of... No, I do know why, because I watched a lot of Taskmaster while I was doing the Dark Souls 3 DLCs. Yeah, I was actually a pretty good student, but I was so burnt out that it was like desperation to find ways to rest my brain so that I would have enough energy to keep going. It was not the wise. It was bad. It was a bad time. There's ways to have a better time in college than I did. I don't recommend living it the way I did. Probably the least favorite part of my life so far. Just like overall. Yeah, there was a lot of good, don't get me wrong. There was a lot of critical things that needed to happen as far as just like life experience and learning how to navigate like the modern, not the modern world, but well, kind of the modern political world and that mess that's been broiling over so terribly in the last decade or so. Learning how to adapt to that, going to better grips with context and history and stuff like that. In any case, I'm not saying it wasn't beneficial. It was certainly worth doing, and definitely worth doing as far as job is concerned, 100%. But it was also the most miserable I've ever been. To be fair, I was rather fortunate in high school in that I was quite the nerd, and yet I still, like, had to find social life because there were a ton of nerds. Probably part of just, like, the modern world at this point. There's just a lot of nerds around. It's kind of nice. But, okay, that's the wrong side. I would like to find one of the hands that we'd worked out a little better. Appears to not be on in that at the moment. Probably in here, actually. Line work? Pose refinement. Discovery. I don't remember what any of these are. Little guy! Ah, yeah, little guy! That's not to say college is inherently bad. I think, a lot of them have figured out how to handle some of the introductions and like making students feel more comfortable much better after the whole pandemic happened. Because they realized they needed to pay more attention. Like, they had been paying attention to students' mental health, but they ended up making it more of a focus and not, like, not just like waiting for crisis and treating it then, but like actively at events trying to be more open to everyone. Because I don't know about y'all, there's a lot of events in college and high school that are very peppy, and that's not bad. That's really good for some people who really want that. And there's a lot of events in college especially that are very aimed at, this is your family, come join us, which is also, again, not inherently bad. There's a lot of students, especially ones coming from homes where either it's outright dangerous or it's just they need to get out of it for a while, for whatever reason. Making the new place feel like home is important. However, if you aren't in those boats, it wasn't great. It basically felt like being at a pep rally and then having the school attempt to usurp the family, even though the pep rally had not improved my opinion of the school nearly enough to have any interest in that. And that was assuredly not their intent, but it was also assuredly the result. And given that I, like, even at just the orientation had a number of just not good experiences with fellow students, I was just like, okay, I don't actually want to be here all that much anymore, and now you want me to be cheering songs about it? Like, maybe this is a me thing because I overthink the heck out of stuff, and because I'm stubborn about really arbitrary, like, formalities. Sometimes. I won't deny that. I don't know why I have hang-ups on certain things like that, but I feel like in order to do a pep rally, you gotta kind of earn it first. The students have to be excited. And don't get me wrong, there's some students who are never going to feel peppy. And that, that is what it is. But if the first thing you do before, like, the rest of orientation is a pep rally, where you're teaching the school songs and you're shouting and getting excited and hyped up, I don't think that's the way to do it. Because you're not, like, the students, yeah, they've gone through the whole college admissions process, but they don't really know your university yet. They don't know the student body, they don't know who else they're going to be staying with and spending time with, what, like, the culture of the campus is, any of that. Almost certainly a large chunk, if not all of them, will have either the wrong idea or just straight up no idea what it's actually like. So starting with the celebrations it's not misleading, it just feels premature. It's like we don't know what we're celebrating yet. We don't even know if this is worth celebrating yet. Obviously, some people go into college with a lot more passion about their specific school than I did. And they get very, like, they'll get peppy about it at the drop of a hat, which, again, that's honestly wonderful. To be able to get excited about it and really enjoy it is a great thing. But it's not something you can force people to do. Then again, maybe my school was right on that one, because they had a really bad introduction program, and they knew it was bad because they completely revamped it the next year and cut out most of the things that I and most of the students were griping about. So credit where it's due, they were in the process of improving it quickly, but, like, it was not a good orientation. Mainly because it was not on campus. It was like a bunch of icebreaker activities in some weird, like, I don't know. Like, it was a campsite owned by some religious group that I didn't recognize. It was a bizarre experience. In, like, these giant 60-person cabins, and I don't know. I feel like if your goal is to, I realize they probably wanted to orient students to each other, but if your goal is to orient students to the campus, leaving the campus doesn't work. And if your goal is to orient them to the city, taking them to a weird campsite outside of it also doesn't work. So, like, it was ill thought out. I heard much better reviews of the later orientations. Trying to remember where I was going with this thought. But the point is, generally speaking, that, like, I don't know. I feel like they figured, schools in general are doing better on that. Post-COVID, they figured out how to welcome people who are, like, more remote and less connected still, like, both in the literal sense and the more abstract figurative one. They seem to be, I don't know, trying to make strides at doing better on all that. So very commendable in my opinion that some universities are really having a go at that. Ah, okay, right. I was counting fingers dumbly. This needs to be wrapping around the thing, so I probably ought to actually draw the weapon before we do that. But yeah, I don't know how we got on college gripes. Again, there were so many people who were wonderful from my school, and there were lovely opportunities, but there were also so many bad ones, especially early on. Like getting towards, well, no, junior year, there's sort of different things you have to balance in school, and it felt like each year there was one of them that was choosing to be the villain. Freshman year was definitely the social stuff. Like, I took refuge in my classes because I enjoyed them and they still made sense the same way high school ones did. Not necessarily like the content and all, but like the structure was similar, the way things worked was a lot like my high school. So it felt comfortable, cozy, and like I'm confident that I knew what I was doing. That's an interesting 3 C's, comfortable, cozy, and confident. I'm not sure that those need to be put into some business seminar. But the social stuff was such a mess. Because I was, I think, in more of a bubble than anyone realized, obviously myself included, but I think a lot of people assumed that I had figured stuff out that I in fact had not. Like simple things, like I somehow completely missed that there was like party or drinking culture associated with universities at all. In my mind, high school was where you had everyone. You had the people who were partying, the people who were doing it seriously, everything in between, because it was required. So, you know, people were doing that. And so in my mind, college was only the people who were taking it seriously. And that anyone else would have gone on to do their own thing at that point. They weren't going to waste their time with college if they weren't going to, you know, knuckle down and try to do it. That's oversimplified. There's people who are extremely sharp who still like to party, which I really hadn't considered in high school. But also, it just, like, that's not how college works. There's even more people from more different backgrounds and who take things even more or less seriously. And, I seared into my brain. They were doing this survey, or not survey, it was like safety training with drinking and all that stuff to make sure people, like, to try to get people to not do it underage, but if they were going to at least keep them safe, which, by the way, don't drink underage. It's stupid. It's also not, like, drinking in general is just overrated. It's not good. IMO, you know, to each their own, but personally, I literally have no clue what the appeal is. I don't get it at all. Don't waste your time on it. There's more interesting things you can do. But they had this survey, and I was going in expecting, like, originally I'd expected, like, none of the student body to drink, because and then after orientation, when I met some very riled up students, I was like, okay, apparently some do. That's clearly not the crowd I want to run with, because, you know, I was a little judgmental about that stuff in those days. More than a little. I was a pain. I'd like to think I've come a long way, even if I don't enjoy it and I don't recommend it. I at least, like, I'm not borderline hostile to people who do it. Again, I was very sheltered. Again, by complete accident. No one was intentionally trying to, like, protect me from the outside world. I just completely missed the ball on this stuff. Perhaps it's not so. Perhaps it's partly sheltered, partly that I was not nailing those insight checks. I min-maxed int, okay, not whiz. Wisdom. But yeah, and so this survey happened, and they were like, pick which percentage of the student body doesn't drink, and the options were like 0, 5, 10, and 25, and I was panicking because I was already a little shaken by the orientation and stuff, and and my roommate at that point, and like seeing that, I was like, oh no. I optimistically clicked 25, and thankfully that was the right answer, and they're like, yes, you're right, like a whole 25% of students don't even partake at all, so it's perfectly normal. And I was just like, what do you mean a whole 25? Do people expect 5? I was so panicked. Or just, honestly, it's like shell-shocked almost. Like, I was in, like, a state of shock for the first while. For a long time, I was worried that it was, or not worried, I was kind of hoping that maybe I just accidentally picked a party school or something. Which, as it turned out, the school I was at did rank fairly highly as far as party schools go, which I had no idea when I applied. I literally wouldn't have accepted if I had known that. Because especially early on, I would have assumed, like, oh, party school means that they clearly don't know what they're doing because schools aren't for partying. So yeah, suffice it to say, social was rough. And not like I didn't have friends, but it was more that I was trying to come to terms with the fact that I was not at all in the majority on opinions about things like drinking and stuff like that. And sort of a worldview shift that needed to happen. I definitely needed to figure that out at some point and to get less pretentious about the whole mess. But it was still very, very jarring. And it did not help that my freshman year was during the 2016 election, which, if anyone remembers that, regardless of your opinions on, like, the candidates or who was running, it was very tense. There were lots of stressed, angry people. Lots of stressed, angry people. And the media frenzy around it was ridiculous because they hadn't had something like that before, with the candidates acting the way that they were. So it was... And given that that's a time when you're trying to meet a bunch of new people, and the main current events topic to talk about is extremely contentious politics, it, basically I learned to walk on eggshells real stinking fast with most interactions, which is not really, like, how you want to have to... That's not how you want to have to be managing, like, new friendships and everything, is constant eggshell walking. That's not ideal for, like, every new interaction and every classmate and all of that. Yeesh. I mean, I still walk on eggshells a lot, but I found, like, comfort levels and reasonable boundaries that I can set and be like, hey, you know, here's my thoughts, here's what I'm going to talk about. Like, you know, we can... I'm happy to talk about certain things. Obviously, y'all have seen my stream rules about politics. A lot of that was sort of forged in the live fires of navigating all that mess. So my first year, like, social stuff was just, or like, maybe more society stuff was just traumatizing as I sort of realized what things were actually kind of like. It's so silly to... It probably feels silly for most people. They're like, what do you mean it's traumatizing to learn that people drink in college? But I had no idea. And I was still a very pretentious time where I thought that that was, like, something only idiots would do. I still think that the degree to which people drink in college is frequently beyond idiotic. It's the kind of thing that needs to be balanced if you're going to do it. Don't get blackout drunk constantly. You'll ruin your life. But, you know, it is people's choice. Maybe I am still a little pretentious about this. Some people can manage it all just fine and have no problems. They can be top of the class, and they can also have all the parties they want. So, you know, clearly I'm not the expert on that. Don't get into these details yet. There. And I shouldn't do a braid pattern anyway. That'll probably be, like, way too confusing with the hair. Gotta mark these down a little bit, and then we can sort of make the eraser a tad with that. And then, like, sophomore year, it kind of balanced. Sophomore year was probably my best year. I've still had a lot of free reign to find classes, but I was starting to find stuff towards what would eventually become my major. And towards, like, additional side stuff that I kind of wish I'd pursued more. Like, it was... That one was really... Like, sophomore year was where I was in my groove. Junior year, stuff swapped. I'd finally found, like, a fairly stable social balance. Admittedly, other than One Piece, but I'll get to that. Not the show. Still haven't seen the show. But the academics kicked into such aggressively high gear that I basically burnt out in junior year. Sophomore year was nicely balanced. Junior year, the balance shifted badly. And then senior year was complicated. It still had the balance problems, truth be told. I was having a bad time, but I at least wasn't like in the complete depths of burnout for part of it. Actually, the best part of senior year for me was when the pandemic hit, which is terrible. But like looking for a silver lining on it, because obviously I'm not the sort who'd be like, oh yes, this is wonderful, and there were no bad consequences. It was a nightmare. But for me, it sort of forced me to cut down on a lot of the, I don't know, what do you call it? It's almost like a calcium buildup of activities and commitments where I was so intertangled in so many different things that I didn't care about anymore and didn't want to participate in, but there was inertia in it, so I was going to keep going to the club, or in most cases I'd somehow gotten like looped into being an officer in the club, and so I was like, crud, I can't leave now. And because I'm stubborn, I wouldn't just bail. I was like, well, I'm an officer in the club. I'm going to make sure it still works, even though I have no interest in being here. Because I'm not going to drop the ball for people. At least, not if I can avoid it. But what it really meant was that once COVID hit and it like killed a lot of those side activities, it actually freed me up to do stuff I enjoyed. And that's when I was able to really get back into doing art. I'd been able to dabble a little bit here and there. And then there was the sewing, which came less as a dabbling in art and more as a frantic, desperate escapism during the junior year burnout, when I just spent like in one 24-hour period, well, not 124, I spent a total of 24 hours over the course of like a week making stuffed animals just as a desperate escape from my classwork. I'll be honest, the stuffed animals were much more rewarding than the particularly stressful class that I was taking that semester, so I'm happy with how that time went. Okay, I need to think through the outfit again a little more. Rough sketch. Right, okay, I hit the layer that's got like the... Oh, was it still on this layer? Okay. Maybe put away that arm. Okay, if that's where the legs are, then I can work with that on the fabric folds a little bit. I'm gonna have to come back to that hand. I can tell that my brain isn't like super in hand mode right now, and so maybe we'll come back to it may well come back to it today, but like it ain't there yet. And I can tell that it ain't gonna get there for a little bit. At least not while I'm ranting, or reminiscing on college, I suppose. Because I guess, like, on the flip side, like, junior year social stuff was actually picking up a little bit, although it really picked up senior year when I was able to reconnect with some friends from a study abroad and, like, sort of make my own way a little more. I had the confidence and like finally had the skill set and know how to navigate that stuff better. And I went to some new clubs and things where I wasn't an officer and I could just hang out, and like that was actually fun and not just full of additional homework. So yeah, that was a good time socially, but it was a rough time academically. And then my final semester during the actual pandemic was actually really wonderful. Classwork was hard, but I felt like it was more balanced, and I was sort of in the end game at that point. But the biggest thing, and this was actually the biggest thing that the pandemic also freed me from, was my school really pushed research. They wanted you to do original research. They were like, the whole point of this is not just to learn to get knowledge, it's to learn so you can contribute back to knowledge, which is a fair philosophy. However, I hate it. Not the philosophy, but I hate doing it. That was, at least the field I was in, my passion was learning it. My passion was not building onto it for history stuff. And that was true of most things. Like, I didn't want to I didn't want to be going out there and doing like the new research. I wanted to be figuring out things from a bunch of different places that hadn't been connected before. Which, thinking back on Foundation, is exactly the kind of philosophy that they decry as stagnant, and they're not entirely wrong. But I also just, like... it might have been a thing that I could have come into if it was on my own time, but it was pressured so aggressively, and I felt obligated to do it. That, and for the record, I don't mean, like, I had a wonderful internship at a research library where I did a research paper there, and I loved it, because it was totally out of bounds of, like, the normal stuff I was studying. It was a completely different type of thing. It was a fun learning in its own right. It wasn't digging through, like, 60 books and panicking because maybe the 61st book already made the argument you're making, and so, like, you're not actually doing original work. Honestly, the competition in research was probably the part I hated the most. Both for resources and for ideas. I had no interest. I won't deny I can get competitive over certain things, but if it's, like, job-critical stuff, I can't. I can't. I'm bad. I'm so bad at it. I can't do competitive stuff. It's just, like... I don't know. The idea of sinking a year into your life of research on something only to find out that, oops, someone published it a month before you were going to, and then realize that year, it's not necessarily a waste, like maybe you can adapt it, but a lot of that time is dead time that was worthless. And I was realizing that I was already not really enjoying, like, my studies as is, so I wasn't going to get, like, implicit joy out of, like, studying for studying's sake. So the idea of doing all of that and then having a decent chance that would in fact be a complete waste, I was just like, no. I hated it. But I'd been sort of unintentionally, semi-intentionally, peer pressured and professor pressured into doing the research, because that was how you progress that career and how you do that thing. And I don't think they were wrong for doing it. I just think that I was the wrong person to go for. So I ended up doing a lot of that stuff, and or at least committing to do a fair bit of it, which thankfully those plans got thrown under by the pandemic. But I put in a lot of extra hours into that, and like the prepping and applications and all of that jazz. That was wasted effort because I didn't go through with it, but it was more sunk cost, and I'm glad I didn't go through with it. That's not to say research is bad. There's a ton of people I know who their most fulfilling college stuff was their research. They absolutely loved it and adored it. I'm just saying it's not for me. It's absolutely a wonderful resource, and it's a very cool thing that people can do. I mean, that people, even at a fairly young age, can contribute completely new ideas and new discoveries and new interpretations. It's just wonderful. But it's not something I wanted to do. It's not what I wanted to spend my time on. So I was like kind of gridlocked, overcommitted to nonsense junior year of college. Academics and clubs at that point, because I've been looped into being on the exec board of... Well, I managed to get out of one of them, but I was the president of 2 different clubs that year, which was... The one I got out of would have been 2.5. I would have been the VP of a 3rd club. So... yeah, I was burned out hard. That was around the same time I found, like, Red Letter Media and, like, fun things like that, but it's also around the same time, I guess it was more junior year on this one, with the pressure where I was desperate for anything to distract myself, that I watched, like, I binged all of Red vs. Blue, which, I'm gonna be honest, I don't particularly like Red vs. Blue. It's not that it's bad or anything. It's perfectly fine. It's just not really my sense of humor. But I binged it just because I was, and part of it maybe because I was introduced to it I found it as a desperate binging tool, as opposed to under more favorable circumstances. But, like, I binged through that one. I binged the entirety of The Office. Like, the American one, all, like, 13 seasons or whatever nonsense it is that goes all the way up to 2007. And it's just like... And I don't really like The Office's humor either. I was just so desperate for anything that wasn't what I was currently doing. all of this to say, you know, I know this sounds like a rant, but my main point of it all is that even with those rough times, I still got a lot of beneficial things out of it. I met a lot of new friends who I did enjoy spending time with. I grew as a person in a lot of aspects. I found a lot of entertaining things, including media that shaped my language. But I still have a little too much weird, not weird, but like out of place British twang sometimes. In any case, not complaining that much about that one. It's fun. But it's also a reminder that in those times where it's just absolutely miserable, like, sometimes a better thing follows. Certainly there's times infinitely more miserable than any of the stuff I experienced in college. I'm not pretending like, oh, my, you know, misery is truly dramatic and all things are equivalent. No. But I think perception of misery, like how we react to it, is relative. If you've never had anything bad to you, then a small thing will feel extremely traumatic emotionally. Even if it isn't actually that serious. And so I've learned when you're interacting with people and they're reacting really vehemently to something, it may just be that they don't have context of worse things. I may not be, like, you know, I try to assume the best in people, but sometimes they're just, you know, cold and unpleasant. But generally, I think there's a fair chance that, like, yeah, it's just they don't have context for something worse. That's why they talk about first world problems. Not to say people in the quote-unquote first world, which is a dated term in and of itself, don't have serious problems too, but there's also some petty ones that can feel serious if you've never had more serious ones. So, regardless of the actual severity, know that when you're in an emotional spot where you're feeling completely overwhelmed, that there's potentially better stuff coming. Not always, but it can be. It absolutely can do better. And I say this because I am so much happier now doing something that I had completely brushed off in college as no way would that ever be what I want to do. Because the one thing I was vehement about is that I wanted nothing to do with the corporate world. I didn't want to work for a business. I didn't want to work at a desk job. It sounded like a nightmare. Like absolutely the worst. I had no interest at all. But sometimes opportunity knocks rather more loudly. Around the same time that I completely burned out on all the research stuff, I realized that grad school was really not the direction I want to do my life, because it was more specialized and more research, which were the two things that I hated the most in college. I enjoyed more general and less research. So I was like, okay, grad school seems like it's going to be just extending years of more intense, like, misery. And I was already in a pretty, like, frustrated and burned out-ish place. I wasn't like the full burnout of junior year, but senior year was still pretty rough. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do that. I need to take some time to figure out what I do want to do. And then, lo and behold, someone I knew through, like, used to be, well, I'm an Eagle Scout, and so I was in Boy Scouts back in the day, and someone I knew from the Scout troop was like, hey, we've got an opening at my company, or the company they work at. And you seem like you'd be a good fit. Do you want to apply? And I mulled it over for like a day or two before I went in. And I was like, well, is this something I want to do? I mean, it seems like business life would be extremely boring. It's not like teaching or working with kids, which is the stuff that I had enjoyed. I used to work at a children's museum. And kids are fun. They still have enthusiasm about life. So the more burned out you're feeling, the more it's actually like, hey, awesome, here's people who can appreciate the little things. It was fun. I enjoyed working at that museum. But I was like, okay, this is like the definition of corporate desk job. It was even like supporting a sales team, which, to be fair, there's plenty of legitimate sales teams and perfectly lovely stuff, but they also have a stereotype of being a little pushy and a little unpleasant. Thankfully, the sales team was neither of those things. But I wasn't sure, and I did eventually decide, yeah, okay, I'll call him back and actually apply for it. And it's worked out amazingly. I've had such a wonderful time. I've gotten to meet so many cool people. Certainly, it's not all fun and games. It's still a job, but like, it's so much more. Fulfilling is not even the right word, because I'm not entirely sure it is, truthfully. Like, I'm so abstracted away from any of the stuff that we actually do as a company that there's not really that tangible sense of, look, I'm achieving a thing. But it's so much more enjoyable. Like, the stuff that we're trying to do is stuff that I actually want to work towards. Like, I enjoy most of the tasks I do day to day, even if they get a little rote at times, but that's fine. It's not like the frustration and stress that college was. And I have so much more, like, admittedly I get a little defensive about my free time, and I've overbooked the heck out of it, but I'm the one who gets to overbook it. I can actually choose where I want to be spending my time. So even though I probably have considerably less free time than I did in college, it feels like much more. Because I'm not, like, triple committed or, like, panicked about, like, doing all of the bonus stuff or, like, all that. Oh, no. What layer have we been on this whole time? Okay, we're good, we're good. Like, so, something... It's so funny. I thought college would be the thing that was, like, the super freeing for academics and stuff. And then, like, I figured the job was going to be, like, either I'd have to find something creative or stay in academia, because I didn't want to get tied down on a job. And it ended up being just the opposite. Having the job was absolutely freeing, and college was absolutely torment. And again, there were so many wonderful things. I met so many cool people. I got to do a lot of very cool things in college. Studying abroad was wonderful. I'd highly recommend if you ever have the opportunity. Like, there was a lot of good, but there was also more bad than at any other point in my life. And it was so bad. The bad was so bad. I'll be honest, at my college, within the first month, I was literally, like, searching other schools and thinking, like, maybe I've just found a bad school and I need to transfer. No, but I realized the problems I was facing are problems everywhere. But I was desperate. I was really desperate. Yeah. So, I won't deny, I eventually, like, I found my place. Like, senior year, I finally had, like, a solid group of friends. I had solid friends earlier, but I didn't have, like, a big group of them. And I finally was, like, able to spontaneously hang out with people a little more and do stuff like that. It was fun. But like, yeah, freshman year was a bad time. Not to traumatize anyone who's starting their school experience in, like, 2 days. I realize the timing of that's probably why it's on my mind, but the timing of that's unfortunate. Like, again, they've come a long way on this stuff, and I feel like most people aren't as sheltered as I was, so the shell shock won't be as bad, and the political situation is very different from in those days, so there's a lot of reasons to be more optimistic about going to college now than when I did. But just also, you know, learning, it's not even to set boundaries, but learning how to adapt your comfort level to the situation is, I guess, just kind of part of it. But also, like, I don't know, maybe you'll find your crew. Like, a lot of people get to college and they're just like, hey, these are my people, and they find running buddies for life. And that is awesome to see. I'm always happy when I see that. Maybe a tiny bit jealous, but mostly just happy that someone's having a better experience with it. Because I don't wish my college experience on other people. I mean, again, certainly there's infinitely worse options. Like, my college experience, I didn't have anything, like, traumatic happen. Like, I wasn't attacked or anything like that. I just generally had a bad time, like, sorting out what college wanted me to do versus what I wanted to do. And as someone who was always fairly by the rules and never really questioned, I figured what I wanted to do was get a PhD and go do academic stuff. And then when I got to college and realized it was nothing like what I thought it was, I kind of just froze for functionally several years. Because I just didn't have a clue. I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't have a backup interest. I was just like, Because truthfully, I'd actually kind of had two things like that. Junior year of high school, I went to an interesting architecture camp out at OSU up in Oklahoma. And it was fascinating, but it mainly made me realize that I wanted nothing to do with the actual, like, field of architecture and studying it. The realization that it was like a 5-year program, usually 6, like a 5-year program that no one finished in 5 years, which you'll find a lot of those. Be wary of engineering schools for that. And architecture, too. It's rather infamous for pulling the same stunt. But like, so I'd already, the thing I'd wanted to do my whole life, which was architecture, like, I realized wasn't really my plan. And then I got to college, which was the thing I'd wanted to do my whole life, and realized that I also kind of hated doing that. So I was just kind of in a holding pattern for a long time of going along with it, because I was like, well, this is kind of the thing to do. Maybe it gets better. Or at least, maybe everything else is worse. And then eventually I sort of made my way out of that. But the pandemic genuinely helped. Like, it came at a good time to snap me out of almost looping myself back into it for even longer, which would have been really, really just a mistake. For me. Again, for many, many people, it's absolutely the right choice. There's so many wonderful opportunities and things you can do. For some people, it ends up truly being their home away from home, or even, like, a superior to home. But, like, I don't know. I just... It wasn't my place, you know? Everyone finds their place, that one wasn't mine. But I almost stayed there anyway, just because I didn't know of anything else. So maybe don't do that. Wow, it's, nearly 9:15 already. I've been on this topic for a while. And I've been just kind of all over the place with the drawing. I don't know entirely what I'm doing on that front. Okay, so that's how we've done the chest. So that's the shoulders. Face somewhat away from us. I'm actually okay with that. We'll keep the shoulders proud and, like, distant. And the sketch less. It does give it kind of a slouchy neck, though. Well, part of that, to be fair, is because we've gone and done the shoulder a little funky and the collar a little funky, so we can unslouch that neck a bit. We can, like, chill on this. Oh, that's the other thing. Okay, hold on. These lines, let's put them slightly different. Because they're part of the posture problem. No, not that one. That one. That one. Okay, so we were thinking of the shoulder really, like, genuinely being something like this. That's something that shouldn't be. We want more like chest puffed out, intimidating and imposing, not like big belly slouching. Even with fabric being the way it is, and drifting more towards the bottom here. Like, I think it's this will get our idea across better. And of course, a lot of this will be obscured by the hand in any case, but this way we've at least got the pose more generally where we want it. Let's see. Okay, before we jump to the other arm, I may go take a quick break, because that's usually a smart thing to do. Stand up, drink a little more water. I'm drinking a lot of water and my mouth is still dry. Probably because I keep talking about college. Yeah, okay, we'll take a pause and then we'll come back and we'll keep on inking. And I'll try not to get too crazy on the fabric detailing too soon. I found that a little bit helps give it depth, so I'm okay doing a bit, but we'll try not to go crazy on that. So I'll see y'all in just a few. Howdys and salutations, y'all. We are back. Thank you for waiting. Okay, let's see where we left off. I've rambled on long enough about my college days and my lack of desire to return to them. We can talk about something else, like what we're doing now. Which, okay, well, I guess wrap up on the college thing. To be fair, I realize that I sound wildly gripey about it, but really what I'm trying to talk about is not complaining about the past so much as appreciating the present. Pardon. Saturday breakfast at some point here. Like, I don't know, there's, to some extent, the only way, like, the good times can end up feeling like doldrums if you're not careful. And, like, you don't want to get stuck in actual doldrums, but, like, there's times in life where even if everything's good, it's still going to be a little boring. And, like, you don't want that to last forever again, but if it's just for a moment, like, it's, I don't know, it's kind of better. One thing that helps is to remember where it used to be. And, like, it helps me appreciate, like, oh, right. This is still so much better than it used to be. And that usually manifests as griping about college, but, you know, is what it is. So, sorry about all that. Okay. I'm trying to figure out the right drape of this particular outfit. Just one thing I can do is we gathered references for this back in the day. That one's really light and airy, but I think we're actually going for a slightly heavier one at this point. Like, not heavy, but heavier. Let's look at this one. Tell the lean forward is affecting the drape on that one a fair bit. There's still that motion. But, we may have to raise his head a tiny bit just so he doesn't look slouchy. I'm gonna adjust the collar first before we get into this, actually, now that I've seen it and realized, once again, I wasn't paying attention to the center line. If it's something like this. And acknowledge the fact that the collar ought to be a little bit more like that. Admittedly, we're going to want more detail on the collar in general, I suspect. Like, if we end up not inking this, I suspect it's going to be one of the pieces we have to come back to and, like, refine further in order to use this sketch layer as the inks, which is most likely what's going to happen, if I'm honest. But this way, at the very least, we'll get the angle better. Add this onto the tips layer. Unslouch head. There we go. Hopefully I'll recognize when I come back to it that that means neck and not literally the head. But, we'll see. I'm gonna have to, once again, references are the secret to the future, and the past and the present, and just life in general for, well, maybe life in general. Definitely for art, though. Like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel on stuff, you don't want to trace things, but, like, if you want to actually learn to draw a thing, you need to be able to see that thing to draw it. You can't just manifest it from your brain, you know? Brains are good at a lot of things, but spontaneous manifestation is not really one of them. Gotta be honest. Now remember, we specifically were trying not to make the arm silhouette too bold. But I do worry that it's going to undercut the actual, like, twist of the body a little bit. Okay, let's think on that. Be able to get some bagginess off of that if we have the arm actually colliding with this a little bit, which it looks like it's apt to do. I think we're getting a little better at the taper. That elbow is way too low. Holy cow, what am I doing? What am I even talking about? That's ridiculous. Is that supposed to be the elbow? Oh my, okay, actually. Our belt's just really high, to be fair. But our other elbow isn't that low. And like, from directional perspective, this, yeah, it's too low in our rough sketch there. That's fine. We're gonna up it just a little bit. And that might be a little exaggerated even for this. Kind of a diamond-y shape. That's fine. That'll do. Let's see. I don't like that tangent there. We're gonna have to work on that a little bit, but we'll figure it out. I reckon we might be able to see a little bit of that shoulder. And more of the sleeve on that arm. Which ought to be, once again, a bit lower. Let's do that, maybe. Nope. That'll be fine. Pardon me. Yes, we'll draw an actual hand. But actual hands are reserved for days where I have a little more brain power than today. Okay, yeah, smoothing that out helps a little bit. Effective and all. I feel like this hand actually ought to be maybe just a hair smaller. Y'all think so? Because it's fairly distant from us. It needs to not equal the other one. You know, I'm not going to delete these underlying lines until we're sure this is where we want the final, like, hand and arm and all to be. Once again, another bad tangent. Making notes for a future, hopefully less tired me. Because truthfully, I think we may, well, okay, there's one more thing I want to work on a tiny bit. The spikes on this we can do another time. They're fun and easy to do, and we've got good references for them. What I want to work on is maybe closing out the other side of this cloak just a little bit. Cloak, what am I saying? There's that. Okay, so that crease I think is coming from the purse, and that's what's giving that some texture. I'm trying to think of ways to give this like decent texture, and actually the reference I probably ought to look up is like angels. Partly because I think Miquella may have been loosely inspired by some depictions with the way he's illustrated, and partly just because it a lot of depictions of them tend to use this same very loose gossamery outfit. So it might give us something to work with. that really the direction that would pull, though? Okay. Oops, they're not that sharp. Honestly, part of it might be just like bringing this one in a tiny bit, actually. Semi solves the tangent problem. And doesn't really match the leg all that well, but that's okay. For now. Sure, we'll take another look at it and want to make changes, which is fine. We've still got a decent bit of time this month to get this through the line work stage and into the shading in a genuine way. Let's see. Oh, that's right, we had an event for Tuesday. I may drop that in favor of more Miquella art so that we can sort of finish the one thing we're concentrating on. And the next month we've got Sword Timber, but we are also going to do some Gartic Phone. Oh, jeepers, Sword Timber really is coming up fast. Oh, I guess that reminds me. There's one thing I need to figure out on Tumblr. Like, as far as, like, the culture of it. Because, I don't know, I'm trying to get two different competing things out of it, I think. Or at least, it works one way and my brain works another, and I just want to make sure I'm meshing this right. Is there a way to see just someone's posts on there as opposed to reblogs? Because, like, I want my archive to work as, you know, an art archive of my art, and, like, showing that off so it's all in one place. But I also know that the way to actually, like, participate in Tumblr and, like, share stuff, and, like, the stuff that matters isn't, unlike other systems, the likes don't really matter all that much. What matters is reblogging things. Pardon me. Usually often with comments or some such, but sometimes without context. And, like, Ed Tangent sounds like it'd be a fun band name. Or a good Tumblr name. But, basically, I'm just trying to figure out the right balance for that. Because I don't want to, or maybe people are used to it over there, but I don't want to spam my feed with separate stuff. It's not that the stuff is bad or anything. Like, obviously, if I'm liking and sharing it, it's stuff that I like and want to share. But I also want there to be, like, a proper, just, like, archive of work if people want to see just, like, my portfolio, essentially. I don't want them to be digging through other like, shared art and stuff at the same time. And, I may just need to investigate the settings on that a little bit. Main reason I'm thinking about that is because for Sword Timber, I tend to spend more time than usual, like, excitedly perusing, and seeing what other people are up to. And so, like, I have a sneaking suspicion that, I don't know, but basically that I'm going to be reblogging a ton of stuff, and I don't want that to destroy the feed and make it impossible to find my own stuff too. But I don't really understand how it works. There we go, we're starting to get into, like, a little bit more of the more gossamery shading. These can actually arc up a little bit before they reach their end. Is kind of neat too. That does end up making, without the end visible, it does end up making that look like a bridal train. Maybe we leave it as is for now. I don't love the lack of texture on this, but I'll have to keep working on that one. Maybe there is no harm in, like, having the bottom part of this visible. That actually would definitely give it more texture if you've got, you know, like, the peaks and valleys. I don't know. Stuff to think about. Where's the actual knees? They're like way lower though. I'm gonna look back at our pose reference, because, like it or not, this is what we're going with. And I do like it. This one looks so confident and almost pretentious. I need to make sure that I'm still capturing that with the final sketch. And this motion is not helping it. I think we need this to be more straight down. He's standing there staring. He's not passing by. Doesn't help the bad tangent, still. But that's a separate problem to be solved. Probably better to solve that one after this one in any case. Helps, helps prevent having to rework it again later. The rough sketch, hide these. Actually, neck almost makes it look like the Dancer of the Boreal Valley or something of that sort. But yeah, perhaps it's better to have the neck slightly higher up. Given that that is, what we planned for. Sorry, I just went into focus mode there for a second. Not entirely sure why. Yeah, that's actually pretty, fairly ominous, having him almost slouchy like that. I kind of like the proud look better, though. I'm gonna have to work on improving that. Their base sketch, I guess it was a little bit slouchy still. Yeah, actually. I need to adjust the head position, just a tad. Which usually where the trouble begins, so we won't go crazy on this. Let's just go. Man, I'd planned to end this stream a tiny bit early, actually, but... earlier than now, actually, I should say, a lot early. But, since it's been going well, I've been letting it go. However, I think it's probably about a good time. We've got this loosed in, we can, Okay, we've still got a few things to finish here, obviously. Fingers on this. The spines on this. I'm actually liking how this fabric is kind of coming together in its drape. And I'm glad that we just sort of casually sketched that out until it happened. This whole arm, nothing about it's quite right. And I think it's messing with the shoulder and slouch too. Too slouchy? Maybe. Just leaving myself some notes. Not on a separate layer this time. I mean, I guess we could real quick. Easy enough to do. Oop. Sketch notes. Oh, nice. Okay, that's nice. I like this one because the neck almost feels pulled back instead of leaned forward. Seems to work better. Do the rough sketch. But I mean, I will say, loving this arm. It's actually at a good angle. I'm happy with that. You know what? I'm gonna before we wrap for the night, I'm actually gonna just straight up toss this arm. I think it's so off that it's going to cause problems even when I try to come back to this later. Like, it's gonna mess with my head. And it messes with, like, the borders of a lot of other things, so it makes the posture a little harder to get a read on, which is kind of a useful note for the final piece too, truthfully, because if I'm going to go to a lot of work to try to show posture and then I just totally botch that, or like bury it rather, that's kind of a bad use of time. This end. Even that looks better. I'm tossing the baseline of the face though, like the hair. We'll go back to the rough sketch for the head. I think that one is better with some fresh eyes on it. I do think it's very doable though. And I probably don't need the arrow in the notes for this one. We've already got that same note on the other piece anyway. Or the other stage, rather, so we'll see it there when we're looking at that. And that arrow now pointed to literally nothing, so. I'm going to toss the color too. One thing I've learned is that sometimes if you've got a drawing that's going south and you just bail on it right away, you come back to it and your own bad notes from last time cause you to continue to have, like, the mistakes proliferate because they're building off of the existing mistakes you made. Like, your first impression is back to the wrong way, so it's kind of hard to get a fresh eyes on it. This way, when I come back, I'll be able to actually look at the reference layer below, because we have that, and build off of that. However, I do think I'm going to wrap it there for this morning, for today. I can tell that I'm fading. I need to go take a nap. Thank you all for listening to my weird ramblings on this fine, whatever time of day it might be for you. And I hope that we will see y'all on the flip side. Have a good one.